My husband, Ethan, finally cut off his toxic mother and sister when they had the audacity to demand that we give up our dream home for my jobless sister-in-law, Natalie, her deadbeat gaming addict husband, and their 6 kids. Looking back, should have seen it coming. His family had always been toxic, but I never imagined they would stoop this low, to the point of trying to manipulate us into giving them our home just because they felt entitled to it. But before I get to that, let me give you some context. Ethan, the golden child. My in-laws have always had a toxic dynamic, and over the years, it started affecting my life in ways I never expected. Ethan was always his mother's favorite. Growing up, his mom, Brenda, treated him like he was her entire world. Since his dad was always working, Brenda and Ethan had an extremely close relationship, to the point where it felt unhealthy. But the same couldn't be said for his younger sister, Natalie. Natalie was always treated like the lesser child. Brenda loved her, sure, but she never doted on her the way she did with Ethan. She never went out of her way to support Natalie the way she did for her son. Even as an outsider, I could see it clearly. Brenda worshipped Ethan, but barely tolerated Natalie. And that's where the real problem started. Because of this favoritism, Ethan had always tried to be the perfect older brother. Since their mom neglected Natalie, Ethan took it upon himself to fill in the gaps. If Natalie needed money, Ethan gave it to her. If she needed emotional support, Ethan was always there. If she made stupid decisions, Ethan bailed her out. It became a pattern. Natalie would make one bad decision after another, and Ethan would clean up her mess because he felt responsible for her. At first, I thought it was sweet, he was just being a good brother. But over time, I realized that Natalie was taking advantage of him. And the worst part? Their mother encouraged it. Red flags in the beginning. The first real red flag was when Ethan and I first started dating. At the time, Ethan had just graduated from college, and his entire family still lived together in one house. However, since Ethan was the golden child, his parents had given him an entire floor to himself so that he could have privacy. This meant he could invite friends over whenever he wanted, without worrying about his mom or sister bothering him. Because of this, he would occasionally invite me over to spend the night. And at first, everything seemed normal. But then, I started noticing something weird. Natalie's creepy obsession with Ethan. Natalie had this habit of barging into Ethan's room early in the morning without knocking. And she did this even when we were sleeping together. At first, I thought, okay, maybe she just forgot to knock. But when it kept happening, I started to feel uncomfortable. There were times when I was not even fully dressed, and she would just stand there, talking to Ethan like it was completely normal. And Ethan? He never thought it was weird. To him, this was just his little sister being annoying. But to me? It felt disturbing, like she was purposely intruding on our privacy. So, after one particularly awkward morning, I finally brought it up to Ethan. Babe, why does Natalie always barge in without knocking? It's making me uncomfortable. Ethan sighed and rubbed the back of his neck. Yeah, I know. She's always been like that. She never knocks. That's not normal, Ethan. He shrugged. She doesn't mean anything by it. She's just used to having free access to my room. That response didn't sit right with me. I told him, I don't feel comfortable staying here if she's going to keep doing that. Can you install a lock on your door? To my relief, Ethan agreed immediately. He didn't argue with me or try to defend her behavior. Instead, he just said, yeah, that's fair. I'll put a lock on it. And that's when all hell broke loose. The meltdown. The next morning, Natalie tried to barge in like usual, but this time, she couldn't open the door. And she completely lost it. She started banging on the door, shaking the doorknob violently, and yelling. Ethan! Why is the door locked? Open up! Ethan groaned and got out of bed. Natalie, I'm sleeping. Go away. But instead of leaving, she kept banging on the door. Why is the door locked? Since when do you lock the door? Let me in. Ethan sighed, rolled his eyes, and finally opened the door. Natalie stormed into the room, looking furious. And then, the moment she saw me sitting on the bed, her face twisted with rage. She pointed at me and shrieked, "Oh. So it's because of her?" I blinked in shock. What the hell? Ethan frowned. Natalie, what are you talking about? She whipped her head toward him, eyes blazing with fury. You never locked your door before. But now, all of a sudden, you're locking me out? Ethan sighed. Natalie, I locked it because you keep barging in without knocking. It's weird. But Natalie didn't back down. Instead, she turned to me, and the next words out of her mouth made my jaw drop. You're trying to come between me and my brother. What? Before I could even process what she had just said, she turned back to Ethan and yelled. I can't believe you let her do this to us. Us? What did she mean by us? I felt a shiver run down my spine. This wasn't normal sibling behavior. And for the first time, I realized something. Natalie was weirdly obsessed with her brother. Ethan tried to calm her down, but she refused to listen. She kept yelling, kept accusing me of trying to steal her brother away from her. I didn't even know how to respond. I had never, in my entire life, met a woman who was this possessive over her own brother. Eventually, Ethan had to escort her out of the room and tell her firmly. Natalie, you need to stop. You're making this weird. And for once, she actually listened. She left, but the way she glared at me before walking out, it sent chills down my spine. At that moment, I just knew. This wasn't the end of it. This was just the beginning. After Natalie's meltdown over Ethan installing a lock on his door, I hoped things would calm down. I wanted to believe she had just overreacted in the moment and would eventually let it go. But deep down, I knew better. And sure enough, she didn't let it go at all. Instead, her obsession with Ethan only got worse. After the locked door incident, Natalie stopped barging into Ethan's room. At first, I thought that meant she had finally backed off. But then, she started finding other ways to make me uncomfortable. Whenever Ethan and I were hanging out together, she would randomly sit between us, physically wedging herself between us on the couch or at the dinner table. If Ethan and I were watching a movie, she would suddenly say, "Ugh, this movie sucks. Ethan, you have the worst taste. You should date someone who actually likes good movies." If Ethan brought me a drink, she would pout and say, "Wow, you never bring me drinks. I guess I don't matter to you anymore." If Ethan and I had a small disagreement, she would immediately take his side and say things like, "Honestly, Ethan, I don't know why you're even dating her. You guys clearly aren't compatible." She even started digging into my past relationships, asking me extremely uncomfortable questions. One day, when Ethan left the room, she turned to me and smirked. "So, why did your ex dump you? Were you not good enough for him?" I froze. "Excuse me?" She laughed. "I mean, I'm just curious. My brother deserves the best, after all. I wouldn't want him settling for someone who isn't good enough." That was the final straw for me. I had kept quiet for so long, trying not to cause problems. But I was done being nice. I looked her dead in the eye and said, "Actually, I liked my ex-boyfriend's family way more than yours. His sister wasn't a jealous, nosy psycho." Her face went pale. She didn't expect me to push back. And after that, she finally shut up for a while. As it turns out, Natalie wasn't the only problem. Her mother, Brenda, was just as bad. At first, Brenda would pretend I didn't exist. If Ethan and I were at family dinners, she would completely ignore me, talking to everyone except me. If I tried to engage in conversation, she would give one-word answers and then turn away. But once she realized that Ethan and I were serious, she changed tactics. Instead of ignoring me, she started acting like I was stealing her son away from her. One night, when Ethan left the room, Brenda turned to me and said in a sharp voice, "I hope you understand that Ethan is very close to his mother. He's my son first, before he's your boyfriend." I blinked. Okay?" She narrowed her eyes. "A good wife makes sure that her husband stays close to his family. You wouldn't try to pull him away from me, would you?" I realized exactly what she was trying to do. She was trying to guilt-trip me into accepting her weirdly controlling relationship with Ethan. So I just smiled sweetly and said, "Oh, of course not. In fact, I think Ethan should visit you every single day. He should live with you forever. Maybe you guys can even share a bedroom, since you clearly don't want him to have a wife." Her jaw dropped. She was not expecting me to throw her possessiveness back in her face. From that moment on, Brenda hated me. A year later, Ethan and I got engaged. And that's when everything exploded. When Brenda and Natalie found out, they both lost their minds. Brenda called Ethan and started crying hysterically. "I can't believe you're doing this to me. You're abandoning your own mother. You're letting some woman take you away from your family." Then Natalie called me separately. And she was even worse. "This is a mistake. You don't deserve Ethan. He's too good for you. You should break off the engagement before it's too late." I was so sick of her at this point. So I laughed and said, "You sound jealous, Natalie. Do you secretly wish you were the one marrying Ethan?" She was silent for a second. Then she screamed and hung up on me. Best moment of my life. Since Brenda and Natalie couldn't break us up, they switched to plan B, sabotage the wedding. A week before the wedding, Ethan's cousin pulled me aside and told me something shocking. "Did you know that Brenda and Natalie are planning to wear white dresses to your wedding?" My jaw dropped. "Are you serious?" She nodded. "Yep. They were talking about it in the family WhatsApp group. Natalie said there's no reason why only the bride should wear white." I was livid. I ran straight to Ethan and told him everything. And that's when I finally put my foot down. "Ethan, I don't care what you have to do. If your mom and sister show up in white, I will have security throw them out. In fact, I don't even want them there at all." Ethan sighed. "Babe, they're my family. I can't just uninvite them. Then there won't be a wedding." His eyes widened. "You're giving me an ultimatum?" Yes. I had put up with enough. I had tolerated their disrespect for years. But I was not going to let them ruin my wedding day. Ethan was silent for a long time. Then, finally, he said, "Okay. I'll handle it." And to my shock, he actually did. The next morning, Ethan called his dad, Mark, who was the only normal one in the family. "Dad, I need to tell you something. Mom and Natalie are uninvited from the wedding." To my surprise, Mark didn't even sound shocked. "Yeah, I figured this was coming. Don't worry, I'll handle them." And just like that, Brenda and Natalie were officially uninvited. When they found out, they both lost their minds. Brenda called Ethan, sobbing hysterically, saying he was a terrible son. Natalie sent me a bunch of angry texts, calling me a manipulative gold digger. But Ethan stood his ground. And on our wedding day? They didn't show up. Instead, they spent the entire day posting passive-aggressive messages on Facebook. Some people don't appreciate family until it's too late. A mother's love is unconditional, but sometimes sons forget. I just laughed and enjoyed my perfect wedding without them. But little did I know. They were already plotting their next move. And this time, they were coming for our house. After our wedding, Ethan and I finally thought we were free from Brenda and Natalie's nonsense. Without them breathing down our necks, we started our new life together, focusing on our marriage, our careers, and our future. For the first time in years, we felt at peace. No more passive-aggressive comments. No more meltdowns over boundaries. No more insane jealousy. Life was good. But then, we made one huge mistake. We bought a house. And that's when everything went to hell again. Our dream home, or their entitlement. Ethan and I had worked our asses off for years to save up for a house. We budgeted carefully, cut out unnecessary expenses, and sacrificed luxuries just so we could afford our dream home. And after years of hard work, we finally bought it, a beautiful 4-bedroom house with a big backyard, perfect for our future plans. We were so excited to move in. It was our first home together, something we could truly call our own. And at first, everything seemed fine. Even Brenda and Natalie, who had been distant since the wedding drama, suddenly pretended to be happy for us. Brenda even said, "Well, it's about time. Ethan deserves a beautiful home." That should have been my first warning sign. Because what she really meant was, Ethan deserves a beautiful home, not you. And sure enough. 1 month later, she called me. One day, completely out of the blue, Brenda called me. Which was weird. Because we hadn't spoken in months. At first, she tried to play nice, asking me how life was going, how Ethan was, and how we were enjoying our new home. I answered politely but kept my guard up. Then, she casually dropped a bombshell. "So, how does it feel living in such a big house when it's just the two of you?" I froze. Because I knew exactly where this was going. I forced a polite laugh. "Well, it's great. We love having our own space. She sighed dramatically. Must be nice. Especially since, well, Natalie just found out she's pregnant again. I didn't say anything. Yeah, and, with 6 kids now, she really needs a bigger place. But, of course, they just can't afford one right now. I clenched my jaw. And then, Brenda finally said it. So, I was thinking, since you and Ethan don't have kids yet, and your house is so big, maybe you could let Natalie and her family move in with you. I nearly dropped my phone. I blinked. Excuse me? She repeated herself, as if she wasn't saying something completely insane. Well, you and Ethan don't really need that much space, and Natalie is struggling right now. It just makes sense for you to help out. I felt pure rage building in my chest. But I stayed calm. Brenda, this is our house. We bought it with our own money. We are still paying the mortgage. There is no way we're letting another family move in with us. She huffed dramatically, as if I was being completely unreasonable. Oh, come on. It's just temporary. Until they get back on their feet. I nearly laughed. Natalie and her husband had never been on their feet. He was jobless, and she worked part-time jobs while he sat at home gaming all day. There was no way in hell they were ever leaving once they moved in. I wasn't stupid. So I stood my ground. No. We are not housing Natalie and her kids. That's final. And that's when Brenda dropped the second bombshell. Well, Ethan already said yes. That was impossible. Ethan and I shared everything. He would have told me if this was something he had agreed to. So I called her bluff. Oh. Ethan said yes? Funny, because he didn't mention anything to me. When exactly did he agree to this? She hesitated. Well, I just knew he would say yes. He's such a good brother, after all. So she was lying to manipulate me. That pissed me off even more. I took a deep breath. Brenda, this house belongs to both of us. Even if Ethan did say yes, which he didn't, he would still need my permission. And my answer is no. That's when she snapped. Wow. So you really are just a selfish gold digger, huh? I always knew it. You're keeping Ethan away from his family. I rolled my eyes. Brenda, I am not stopping Ethan from seeing his family. But I am stopping you from freeloading off of us. She started screaming, but I cut her off. Let me make this very simple for you, Brenda. If you want Natalie to live in a nice house, you can pay for it. In fact, since you think we should house them, why don't you cover our mortgage? We'll cover the bills, and you can get a second job to pay off the debt. Silence. Then she shrieked, Are you insane? Why would I pay your mortgage? I smirked. Exactly, Brenda. Why the hell would we house your daughter, her useless husband, and their 6 kids for free? She screamed one final insult and hung up the phone. And I thought that was the end of it. But of course, it wasn't. Because Natalie called next. I barely had time to put my phone down before Natalie's name popped up on my screen. I sighed and picked up. Immediately, she started yelling at me. How dare you ask our mom to pay your mortgage? You're the greediest person alive. I just laughed. Natalie, I didn't actually expect Brenda to pay. I just wanted her to understand how stupid her request was. She gasped like I had slapped her. You're heartless. Family is supposed to help each other. I sighed. Oh? You mean like how your husband should be helping you instead of playing video games all day? Maybe instead of expecting us to take care of you, you should expect him to actually get a job. She stopped yelling. I knew that one hit her where it hurt. Then she muttered, You're prioritizing money over family. I smirked. No, Natalie. I'm prioritizing my family. And my family is Ethan and me. You are not our responsibility. Then I hung up. And that was the best feeling ever. But unfortunately, Brenda and Natalie weren't done yet. Because the next time they showed up, they were standing on our front porch. Screaming. After shutting down Brenda and Natalie's insane demand to give up our home, I thought they would finally leave us alone. But I should have known better. Because less than a week later, they showed up at our front door, uninvited. And they were furious. It was a Saturday morning, and I was home alone since Ethan had gone out to run some errands. I was relaxing on the couch, enjoying a quiet morning with my coffee when my doorbell suddenly rang. At first, I thought it was a delivery. But when I checked the security cameras, my stomach dropped. Standing on my front porch, looking angry as hell, were Brenda and Natalie. They were yelling and knocking aggressively, acting like I was legally obligated to let them in. I immediately called Ethan. "Babe, your mom and sister are here, and they're screaming on our porch." He sighed. "I'm on my way. Don't open the door." I wasn't planning to. Instead, I just stood by the door and let them keep making fools of themselves. I wasn't about to reward their entitled behavior by opening up my home to them. Then, Brenda started shouting louder. "Open this door right now." And Natalie added, "We're not leaving until we talk to you." I calmly unmuted the intercom and spoke into it. "Brenda, Natalie, you are not welcome here. Leave now." Brenda gasped dramatically, as if I had just slapped her across the face. "How dare you speak to me like that? I am your mother-in-law." I smirked. "You sure don't act like one." Then Natalie chimed in. "You are ruining our family. Ethan is ours, not yours. You don't get to take him away." I laughed. "Natalie, Ethan is a grown man. He is not your possession. Now, leave before I call the police." That's when Brenda switched tactics. She suddenly put on a fake sad voice and said, "Honey, we just wanted to come talk. We're family. Why are you being so cruel?" Oh, now she was playing the victim? Absolutely not. I turned my sweetest voice on and said, "Brenda, you and Natalie are not here to talk. You're here to bully me into giving you what you want. But guess what? It's never going to happen. Now, leave." Then, I added, "Oh, and by the way, everything you're saying right now? It's being recorded on our security cameras. So if you try anything stupid, I'll have proof for a restraining order." Brenda's face went pale. Natalie stopped screaming immediately. They both exchanged panicked glances before Brenda hissed, "You wouldn't dare." I smiled. "Try me." And right on cue, Ethan pulled into the driveway. Ethan stepped out of the car and took one look at his mom and sister standing on our porch, yelling like lunatics. His expression immediately darkened. "What the hell are you two doing here?" Brenda rushed toward him, trying to hug him, but he stepped back. "No, Mom. Answer the question. Why are you here?" Natalie glared at me, then turned to Ethan and said, "Guess she won't let us in. She's turning you against us." Ethan let out a bitter laugh. "Are you serious right now? You showed up uninvited, you're screaming on our porch, and you're mad that my wife won't let you in?" Brenda sniffled dramatically. "Ethan, baby, we just wanted to talk. We're family." But Ethan wasn't buying it. "No, Mom. You're here to guilt-trip us into letting Natalie move in. And that is never going to happen." Brenda's face twisted with anger. "Ethan, she has 6 kids. She needs this house." Ethan's voice was calm but firm. "Then maybe her husband should get a job and buy her one." Natalie let out a loud gasp. "How dare you talk about my husband like that?" Ethan folded his arms. "Why? It's true. He sits on his ass all day while you work. And now you expect us to house your entire family? Not happening." Brenda stepped in again, switching back to guilt mode. "But Ethan, honey, think of the children. You and your wife don't even have kids. It's not like you need all that space." And that's when Ethan finally snapped. His entire demeanor changed as he glared at her coldly. "Stop. Just stop." Brenda and Natalie both shut up immediately. Ethan took a deep breath and said, "I have tried to be a good son. I have tried to have a relationship with you both. But I'm done." Brenda's eyes widened. "Ethan, no. No. I am done. You have disrespected my wife over and over again. You have tried to manipulate me. You have tried to control my life. And I'm sick of it." Then, he delivered the final blow. "From now on, you are not part of our lives. Do not contact us. Do not show up here again. We are done." Brenda burst into tears, screaming like a soap opera actress. Natalie looked like she wanted to murder me. But Ethan didn't care. He just opened the front door, took my hand, and led me inside. Then, without another word, he shut the door in their faces. Brenda and Natalie stood outside for another 10 minutes, banging on the door and screaming. But we ignored them completely. Eventually, they realized we weren't going to open up, and they left in a fury. And that? That was the last time we ever saw them. After that, Ethan blocked their numbers. I installed even more security cameras just in case they tried anything else. And over the next few months, we heard from mutual family members that Brenda and Natalie were telling everyone that I had brainwashed Ethan and destroyed their family. But honestly, I didn't care. Because for the first time in years, we finally had peace. No more toxic manipulation. No more uninvited visits. No more entitlement. Just Ethan and me, living happily in the home we worked so hard for. And I wouldn't trade that for anything. Final thoughts. Cutting off toxic family members is hard. But sometimes, it's the only way to protect your peace. I'm so glad Ethan finally saw the truth. And I have zero regrets. Good riddance. Thank you for watching the video. Like it if you watched the video to the end and don't forget to subscribe. Have a nice day.